Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Black Enterprise Senior Vice President and Executive Editor at Large, Alfred Edmond Jr.
Hey, everybody. Yes. Thank you and welcome to the second annual Black Men Excel Summit, a celebration of the best of who we are. Let's do that. Black Men Excel is not just a logo or even an event. It's a statement of fact because the typical black man excels. And this is the message that we are promoting at Black Enterprise, at blackenterprise.com in particular, and it's the message we want you to continue to send out beyond this event. Briefly, I want to bring your attention to, you'll see some men here who are wearing a particular pin that says BE Modern Men. When you see that person, that is a man of distinction. You'll learn more about the BE Modern Man program during the course of the conference, but I want you to recognize that you are amongst some typical black men who excel. Let's give the BE Modern Men a round of applause. And we are already in the process of selecting the BE Modern Men of Distinction for 2019. So I urge you to go to blackenterprise.com. Under leadership, you'll see men, and there's a nomination form. You know some BE Modern Men in your life, in your community, at your job, in your church, and you need to nominate them so that we can begin to identify 100 Men of Distinction for 2019. You can also go to blackenterprise.com/nominate to get access to the form, and you can nominate as many people as you want, as many times as you want, but we want to make sure that the men in all walks of life and all areas of endeavor are being recognized for the great work and contributions they make every single day. Can I get some support for that? Let's make it happen. Today's luncheon and discussion is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase, and I'd like to thank them for their continued partnership with Black Enterprise and for joining us here at Black Men Excel for the second year in a row. So your lunch is already being served, and don't worry, God can bless the food in you just like he can bless the food in front of you, so don't worry about it. But I do want to place a blessing on the food so we can bow our heads, clear our minds, clear our hearts just for a few seconds. Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us together, bringing us here safely. Lord God, thank you for blessing the hands that prepared our food and the hands that are serving our food. Lord God, open us up to your nurturing and your nourishment, not just of food, but of inspiration. And fill us to overflow, not to satisfy ourselves, but so that we have something extra to bring back to our communities, to spread this word, to spread this inspiration, and to remind others that black men, in fact, excel. These things we ask in your name, Lord God. Amen. Our goal this week is to uplift and inspire you in an environment of relaxation and fun, but also to energize and rejuvenate your mind, your body, and your spirit by the time you depart from here to go out and continue to do the important work that you do. So we planned a number of sessions and activities, and I'll share a few of them with you at this time. It's very important that you download the Bizzabo app to receive all the latest updates on all the summit information. So if you haven't done so already, I urge you to do so immediately. And please remember to use the official hashtag for the event, BMXCEL, BMXL. And particularly use that hashtag at tonight's comedy show because the most engaged user on Twitter or Instagram will receive a special prize from our sponsor, Dell. So again, let's use that hashtag and let the world know what we're doing here. You must wear your registration badge to enter all events, so make sure you pick up your credentials in Canterbury. Staff will be available to assist you from now until 5:00 p.m. this afternoon, and we must make a note, a fee will be imposed if we must replace a lost badge. Following lunch in this very room, Bishop T.D. Jakes will have an inspiring, powerful conversation with our President and CEO, Earl Butch Graves Jr., so get ready to excel and to soar to even greater heights after that conversation. At 3:00 p.m. today, in the British Ballroom, which is around the corner from this room, is Black Male and Future at Risk, Cracking the Code to Income Equality, sponsored by our partners Prudential. That will be followed by No More Games, Black Self-Determination and Self-Respect in Professional Sports, sponsored by Carnival at 4:15. Make sure you get your seats. You do not want to miss these sessions. Later, the stakes will be high at our spades competition. Please bring your act right to the spades competition, sponsored by Walmart. There are 2 $500 Walmart gift cards and your reputation as the winner of our first spades competition on the line. Put your game face on and get ready to play. Then for the night owls, because we don't need to shut it down, we just keep it going, head over to Bar 91 at 11 o'clock p.m. for a special fireside chat featuring Brian Reeves, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Dell, and Jerome Hutchinson, Founder and Chief Servant Officer at the International Career and Business Alliance. Cigars will be available for purchase by Tres Lindas Cubanas. And if you are signed up for one-on-one coaching, please be on time. There are a few slots available, so reserve your spot, and you can do that in Canterbury. So now let's get to it. Last night we celebrated the best of who we are by recognizing 3 extraordinary men, among them the corporate giant Kenneth Chenault. And now that Ken is retired from corporate America and joined the ranks of other top African-American CEOs who have departed the C-suite, we are left with a glaring question: who will succeed them? By every indication, the Black leadership pipeline has gone dry. Our panel discussion topic, Busting the Corporate Pipeline, we will meet the next generation of Black leaders and examine where we stand in today's corporate environment, as well as take a look at how efforts such as the Fellowship Initiative can serve as a model for building a stairway of opportunity for tomorrow's leaders. Here to lead us in this intriguing discussion is a diverse panel of outstanding executives, each of whom took a different route to get to his current position in the pipeline of leadership in corporate America, beginning with Damon Munkus, Executive Director of Corporate and Investment Bank for J.P. Morgan Chase. Please welcome Damon to the stage. Terry Woodard, Managing Director of Asset and Wealth Management and Private Bank at J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. Please welcome Terry Woodard. And David Clooney, Head of State and Local Government Relations for J.P. Morgan Chase. Please welcome David Clooney. And leading this discussion, and our moderator, is Jonathan Simon, Executive Director on the Advancing Black Leaders team at J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. Please welcome Jonathan Simon. Gentlemen, have at it.
Thank you, Alfred. It's a pleasure to be back. Last year, we had an opportunity to speak about our fellowship initiative at J.P. Morgan Chase, which is something that we're very proud of, and it's really about the development of Black and brown boys and sending them off to college and providing mentorship support with our J.P. Morgan Chase leaders. So this year, we thought it prime to have a conversation around the corporate pipeline and around the work that we're doing specifically on the Advancing Black Leaders team, and having a robust conversation to really talk about how do we cure some of the challenges that are faced within that corporate pipeline. We're excited as a panel because, number one, you all have lunch in front of you, and number two, we get to precede T.D. Jakes. And we didn't want to come after Bishop Jakes, so we hope that this will be a robust discussion and look forward to taking questions from the audience. So I'd like to first just have my colleagues introduce themselves a little bit more formally. I'll start on the end with Damon, and then we'll come down the panel.
My name is Damon Munkus. I'm an executive director at J.P. Morgan Chase. I've been with the firm a little bit under 2 years. I work in a group called Wholesale Credit Analytics and Solutions, which actually calculates the entire wholesale credit risk exposure for our firm worldwide. And I am the CFO and COO of that group. It's also a position known as business manager. And I'm very happy to be here. This magazine and this company has a very near and dear place in my heart.
Good afternoon. Terry Woodard. I'm a managing director in asset management, specifically in private wealth management. I've been with the firm a little over 30 years, most of it in wealth management. And to Damon's point, Black Enterprise has been always one of those magazines that's been, visible to me, just like most of the other Black magazines that we've had throughout our lives. BE has always been very prominent. So happy to be here.
Good afternoon, I'm David Clooney. I'm the head of state and local government relations at JP Chase. Been at the firm a little under 3 years. I joined the firm from the Obama administration where Damon and I were colleagues previously, and it's also a pleasure for me to be here with you this afternoon. Black Enterprise has been a big part of my life, my family's life for a long time, so it's kind of a dream realized to sit on the stage with you all today, so thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And lastly, Jonathan Simon. I run student strategy for Advancing Black Leaders. Advancing Black Leaders is the diversity advancement strategy at our firm. It was launched a little over 2 years ago by our chairman and operating committee as an opportunity to really focus with intentionality on driving the Black talent pipeline. So we're focused on everything from early college students all the way through to our senior career pipeline, and making sure that we're promoting, advancing and really trying to ensure that that pipeline is robust and that we're engaging in a way with our Black community to ensure that we're creating the next leaders within the firm. So with that, I'll turn to my first question. When you think about a strategy like Advancing Black Leaders, what makes each of you proud to work at the firm, and how have you seen the strategy really have an impact on the culture?
I think for me in particular, all my life I've always sought to be in environments where, particularly in corporate America, where I felt like my values were being upheld. And my values did not always sync with the places that I worked at. But finally, at this point in my career, I am working at a place that I am extraordinarily proud of because they have made a real commitment to the community that I come from. I grew up in the South, in Birmingham, Alabama, and I grew up in a household where my father walked around the house with a red patch on a green army jacket and a black fist on that red patch and green dollar signs drawn in around that black fist. So I was oriented in a particular way from the cradle. And so for the first time in my life, I'm at a company that understands that for us as a people, that economic empowerment is critically linked to our success and our advancement and our full participation in the American dream. And so it's a joy and a pleasure to have a real stake in that mission at our company.
Yeah, for me, I think, if you've been around a corporation long enough, you know that you've had your fits and starts about diversity, right? I mean, we've talked about diversity, and then it gets tabled, and then it gets talked about again, and it's always talked about in a room, with the door closed. And for us, what makes me proud is that our CEO actually had a town hall meeting and presented his, the presentation around ABL strategy publicly on our mezzanine floor of our headquarters building, where he pronounced that we are going to do something about this, that we are going to have a strategy, we're going to hire someone to run that strategy, we're going to make a change here. And that was the first time it had actually been said publicly for everyone to hear. And, it has changed the environment. I mean, because we also have a CEO who's engaged, down to, every detail of what's happening, looking at the numbers, challenging people to do better, forcing people to, either get on board or get out, basically. And so that makes me proud because we actually have an effort that is truly being, being enforced at the top of the house.
Similar to Damon and Terry, it's important for me to work at a place that I believe in, and particularly every job I've had in my career, in the public sector, private sector, I've wanted to believe in the place I'm working at. And we also, as Black folks, particularly Black men, but Black folks in general who achieve any kind of success in our career, have a responsibility to create pathways for others, to bring others along, to have conversations that are not being had, without us being there. And I think the firm, JP Morgan Chase, sees a similar responsibility as being a leader in so many different industries, and particularly in financial services, being the largest bank in America by assets under management. If we don't talk about these things in an open way, and if we don't lead by example, a lot of these conversations won't happen. A lot of advancement won't happen elsewhere. So I appreciate that the firm, its leadership, and all of us there are really bought in on this concept that we all have this responsibility and we all need to keep driving forward toward it.
And I think that's a great point. And one of the things that almost on a weekly basis, our leader in Advancing Black Leaders, Valerie Rainford, who's here with us today, reminds us is that, this work is it's not about changing someone's heart. And she says if their mama couldn't make their heart see what equality looks like and what inclusion looks like, we can't do it as a team. But what we do is everything that we do is we're always approaching it from a strategic perspective and driving it just like you would drive any other business strategy. And so kind of to your point, Terry, having Jamie's commitment and literally, to have the CEO of the firm for 90 minutes go into the lobby of the headquarters building and talk about black talent, unscripted, unadulterated, as you should do, right? And so really having those authentic conversations, I think really helps kind of create a fertile ground for our efforts like ABL to take off. So as you think about your respective careers, what do you think are some of the major obstacles that black men specifically face versus other types of ethnic groups or versus women in the workplace? What do you think is unique to black men? I'll start with you, David.
I'll say one of them is exposure. We often have a hard time finding opportunities to be put on a stage where our talents can be recognized, and others, can look at us as possible people for different positions in an organization. And one of the things that I think is great about Advancing Black Leaders and what a lot of the folks at the firm are doing, one of the roles I have is co-chair of the Black Executive Forum, the Black Managing Directors at JP Morgan Chase. And one of the things we're focused on and we talk about a lot is creating additional opportunities for additional exposure, particularly for the black community at the firm, because folks can be siloed at times. So one of the many obstacles is finding opportunities for exposure in an organic way that help other folks who may not look at black folks at a place like JP Morgan Chase as potential future leaders, letting us come out of the shadows a bit and be recognized for our talent.
Terry or Damon, do you have anything to add to that in terms of obstacles?
Yeah, I would say Valerie has a success formula. It's performance plus excellence, excellence plus exposure. And I would add to that that you definitely have to be good at what you do. You definitely have to get the exposure. But you also have to be able to create relationships within the company with individuals who are influencers who can move your career. And I think that we have a hard time getting that level of professional intimacy within the corporate environment that allows us to get on that trajectory for higher opportunities within the firm. And it's not an easy thing, because if people aren't used to dealing with you as an individual, as a black man, then how do you get that intimacy? How do you get that level of connectivity that allows them to see you not just as a good performer, but someone who they would want to invite into their foxhole, as to have their back. So we have to get to that level, but the only way that happens is if people become more interested in inviting us into that circle.
I want to expand on that, because no matter how user-friendly you try to make yourself to be, there are times when you walk into a room or you're talking to someone and they may be intimidated, particularly if they're from a different background as yours and they've never had an interaction with someone like you with your particular level of education or experience or professionalism. And so I've found oftentimes you have to start slow with some people, because you almost have to meet them where they are. They may not necessarily have met someone like you before in their life. And so you kind of have to educate them along in a very gentle way about who you are and what you represent and what your capacities are. And learning that level of finesse takes time and experience. And you only get good at it with practice. And it takes time. And so I've had meetings in my life or job interviews where I go in and I've ran my mouth for 15 minutes and I realize I'm like, you know what, you just did too much. You just did too much. You know, the person who's looking at you across the table, their eyes are glazed and they don't know what to do with you. They're like, oh my God. So you have to learn how to calibrate depending upon the audience and the person that you're dealing with. And that unfortunately is a burden, and we all have to bear that. And I'm not necessarily saying that other people don't have it, but I think for men, and black men in particular, it's a different and a delicate balance we have to strive, particularly in the corporate environment.
Yeah, just one other, I would just add to you that you're absolutely right. I mean, the perceptions that people have of us are going to be different than they have of our white colleagues. So if I'm super aggressive, it's like, oh, that's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But if my colleague is super aggressive, that's a great thing. He's dedicated, he's hard charging. If I'm too laid back, I'm lackadaisical, I'm not engaged.
Right.
If he's laid back, wow, that guy's really poised.
I mean, I'm a good listener.
That guy's really poised. I want him on my team. So it is a balance that we have to walk because the perceptions are out there and the stereotypes are out there, and you're constantly battling against those stereotypes.
I'm just going to jump on this one too because I'd never forget the very first interview I had for a job on Wall Street, and I remember it was in front of a very senior Caucasian woman, managing director at a firm not to be named, and she said across the table, she said, "I'm just not seeing the fire in the belly."
There you go.
That's the Wall Street word, right? Fire in the belly. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm trying to be cool. I'm trying to
You don't want to see my fire.
I want to see
don't
my fire in
want
the
the
belly.
fire to
I
come
was
out.
like, I'm trying to do something for you, not for me.
Right.
So it's this ongoing challenge to fine-tune how you present yourself that we face.
Right.
And all of us brothers, we all share it in common. I don't care, short, tall, brown, dark, light, whatever. We all share it. Clean-shaven, beard, goatee, dreadlock, whatever it is, if you're within corporate America, we always have to manage that perception in the audience we deal with. It is always a challenge. It will always be a challenge. But we can, I think, learn some lessons about how to do it better.
So we're fortunate again to precede Bishop Jakes, and he's going to talk about mental health and how you kind of keep your sanity, because all of that you're talking about is incredibly exhausting. So how do you guys kind of maintain, because you're always code switching, right? Constantly code switching. And I'm to a point, like, I tell my wife, don't schedule anything with any of my neighbors on the weekend. I just want to do black stuff, right? Right?
Yes.
I just want to be around black people. I want to talk about what happened on Power on Thursday night. Right? So it's exhausting. So how do you guys, particularly, as you're trying to thrive, as you're trying to flourish, balance all of that, given the insanity of just that weight that you're carrying every day?
I was just going to say, for me, I live in Harlem, in New York. So that's important to me because I don't want to be around my people when I go home every day. And that just makes me feel more at home. I automatically decompress when I step off the train on 125th Street. Automatically, my stress level goes from here down to here. So that's the first thing for me. And then the other thing I think also is, and this is something that, we don't do enough of. I have some good friends who have gone through similar trials and tribulations to me, and if something comes up, I reach out. I have to talk to somebody. We can't bottle it up. And we're not trained as men to do that, right? Our biggest thing is to have a stiff upper lip, be strong, handle your business, keep your own counsel. That works sometimes. Other times you have to talk through some of these things. There are some challenges that you can't solve alone. So whether it's a pastor, a friend, a loved one, a family member, somebody, sometimes you just have to talk it through with somebody because you may not have the answer. And I think coming to that realization early is critical, at least for me, because I'm certainly not going to figure it out all myself. I don't always have the right answer. And so having that ability to talk. And I think sometimes you can't do anything else but just hit the gym.
Right.
Because some of the nonsense, hit the gym. I'm serious.
That's what I
Do your
was gonna
fitness.
say, you got to have an outlet. And people have different outlets, and for me, it's running, gym. Some of us will sometimes like, hey man, I just need to, you ready to go? I need a drink, I need to talk.
Yes.
And having resources of people that you can go to and really trust and have an ear, but also get sound, and good guidance, and have them call you out a little bit from time to time.
Yep.
And make sure that you're getting honest advice, and them saying, well, what did you do? How did you get that reaction? Is really, really helpful. So that's a big one for me, is having people I feel comfortable going to with real issues and resources. And Valerie and the folks have done a great job of my first day at the firm, I got an email from Valerie Rainford and folks in the Black Executive Forum I was telling you about, welcoming me to the firm. And I felt like I was a part of this family already. And I have, in old jobs of mine, had a brother come to me and say, hey man, you David Clooney, right? I said, yeah. He said, I heard I got to come talk to you. I said, why? I said, I heard you president of black people. And this was at an old job. Valerie is our president. But having that network is so important. And so that's one piece of it. But also, having outlets and things you do outside. And let me say this. We also have the luxury, I think all three of us, of being senior enough that we can change the tone of some of the conversations at work a little bit. One of the things I've enjoyed doing in my more recent years, especially as I've been more senior, is talking a little bit more about, things I do on the weekends, my fraternity, my, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, my...
Little plug.
Right. My Howard University School of Law, where I went to law school, things I like to do on the weekends, shows I like to watch. And, I look around the room and I'll say, wait a minute, I'm more senior than 3/4 of the people in the room. I don't need to let them dictate what we're going to talk about.
Right.
So, maybe they can learn a little bit about me and what, my friends and I like to do. So, creating an environment where everybody really is comfortable, bringing their whole selves to work, we have a responsibility in doing that, and that helps make me feel more comfortable. So, those are the ways that I kind of address.
And I think one of the real learnings in what you just said is the community. And we've done, and we continue to do a lot of work at JP Morgan Chase around creating a black community where folks know each other. And we're there for each other and really have the opportunity to connect, whether it's you're starting the firm and welcoming you at a senior level, or even the work that I do with students and trying to really make sure that they are stepping into the organization, understanding how to lean in the work experience, in the work environment, and then for more senior folks, making sure that they've got that network. So I think that's a message for corporates in the room, that really trying to create that culture and community. And it's outside of business resource groups. Like, that's something separate, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We have our Black Executive Forum, which Terry leads. All have different purposes in this big ecosystem to support black talent. But they're all important and they serve in unique ways. So let's talk a little bit about your leadership, Terry, on the Black Executive Forum and why that's important.
Well, actually, I co-chair at BOLD, which is our Black BRG. And
what does BOLD stand for? The Black Organization for Leadership Development.
Leadership Development, right? There you go.
For the uninitiated who don't work at JP Morgan Chase.
So, look, I feel as a senior person, you have to be engaged. We talk about standing on shoulders, but what is also important is reaching back. You got to reach back and help other people. And we have a large population of junior talent that is very hungry for that type of engagement. So, for me, it wasn't a question. I mean, you have to be engaged at all levels, supporting the junior talent, bringing them up, cultivating them, and letting them learn from your mistakes, because you've made mistakes, so why should they repeat those mistakes? So things like being engaged with BOLD, or being engaged with the Black Executive Forum, our 114 Black MDs across the firm, coming together and really showing a very cohesive approach to how we want to lead the firm as Black executives. So those types of things I feel are absolutely important, and we should all embrace wanting to be engaged at some level in the company.
I mean, for a company that has 280,000 employees worldwide, to only have 114 black managing directors, to me, is horrible. So we have a long way to go, but we can't get there unless we take an active part in being part of the solution. the company has shown a commitment, and so we have to step up. And part of that stepping up is making sure the pipeline and the bench is deep and wide and real. And so that's part of our commitment.
Let me add some context to that number very quickly, which is when I joined the firm in October of 2015, I believe there were 79 black managing directors. 76. There you go.
Okay.
Valerie
Get it
Rainford
right.
became the head of Advancing Black Leaders in early 2016, and this program has been in place, a little over 2 years now. And, the progress that we've seen in that amount of time has been phenomenal, but we realize we have a significant amount of work to do. And I think relative to a lot of our competitors, particularly on Wall Street, we are leading the charge, but that means the bar is just set extremely low.
Right.
So we need to continue to challenge ourselves and not, pat ourselves in the back when we hit 100, but keep going, toward a higher goal. So sorry.
Absolutely, no, that's great. So one of the things that you mentioned, Terry, was professional intimacy.
Yep.
And being able to, build those relationships, not only relationships that are important to help you get your job, but also relationships that can help you think broadly across the organization in terms of your career aspirations and people who can give you that counsel. How do you coach, particularly junior to mid-level folks, on how to build that personal intimacy?
Well, part of it is just something that's been said here already, which is bring yourself to work. I mean, people, you never know what will resonate with someone about you. And if you hide who you are, then they never get to know you. And so I encourage people to bring, the younger folks, to bring themselves to work, as much of it that they can. There's some things you need to leave at home.
Yes.
Absolutely. But, what your interests are, if you like art, you like music, you play golf, you play tennis, you like to travel. Those types of things that you would do with your, when you meet people for the first time that look like you, well, you should do that with people that don't look like you. Because, you don't know what it is about that conversation that's going to say, hey, you know what? I do that too. Maybe one day we should get together and play some tennis, or maybe we should play some golf. Or, have you been to this particular gallery? So you got to bring yourself to work. You got to let people know what you're about. You got to be willing to try to build those relationships, because without those relationships, essentially you cannot pull yourself up the ladder without help. And that help isn't necessarily going to be someone that looks like you. And more than likely, it isn't going to be someone that looks like you. So you're going to have to make connectivity somehow. And you're going to do that. You should be doing that the same way you make connectivity with your roommate when you were in college, or your best friend when you met him for the first time. You got to put those same types of actions to work in building that type of network internally.
So there's been a body of research that really has looked at how black professionals are undervalued in the workplace. And what I mean by that is, because they're not coming to work and leaning in, you find black leaders who are very involved civically. They're involved in their community. They're in leadership positions in their church. They may serve on nonprofit boards, but they don't even share that information with their respective employers. So they're not leaning in. They're not getting the advantage of that. So you have all of this talent that individuals are bringing to the table that's a part of who they are, that the company's not even aware that they can leverage that talent because they're not sharing it. So how have each of you gotten involved outside of the firm in terms of other things to keep you not only leveraging your leadership skills, but then how do you bring that back to JP Morgan Chase?
I think this is an important point, and we often, before I start talking about outside activities, I think we often have not shared who we are and how dynamic we are as people to a fault, because you'll hear, leadership talking about, well, I just, don't think they're dynamic enough, or they don't have enough going on, or we don't know them like we know the other folks, or they don't, go to the social events the same way. So it's problematic when we are not bringing our whole selves to work, but leveraging our outside activities. One of the things I do is sit on the board of the National Urban League, and that's been an invaluable tool for the firm to use in different times when we have different things that we're trying to achieve in different communities, because you have 90 local affiliates who can plug us into, what's happening on the ground, socially, politically, and otherwise in different communities, and we engage with them philanthropically through our Office of Nonprofit Engagement and even our business line. So the amount of integration I've seen in the little less than a year I've been on the board has been awesome, and it's been something that I felt like I didn't want to tell my boss and other folks I have to go to this conference next week and I got to be out for this and that, and they absolutely, I was wrong in even hesitating to do that because they absolutely support it. They think it's a great thing, and they're not going to do it.
Right.
They're not going to be up there sitting on the board of the National Urban League, so they're happy that I am, and when an issue comes up, they can ask me, hey, what does Mark Morial think about this? What is the board talking about? What does the local affiliate think? So that's one example of a place where there's been a lot of synergy between things we're already trying to do as a firm and where my outside activities that are absolutely part of my personal interest have been a benefit to the firm.
That's good. Terry or Damon, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I sit on 2 not-for-profit boards. I chair one, Jazz House Kids, based in Montclair, New Jersey. It was started by Christian McBride, who is a 6-time Grammy award-winning bass player. And I've been on that board for 4 years, and part of what drew me to it was that I definitely like working with young people, and I like jazz, and I like music like jazz. So I try to combine things that allow me to, get sort of like a double, if you will, out of it, the twofer. And I also sit on the board of Sphinx, which is an organization based out of Detroit, Michigan, which is focused on classical music, for artists that are Black or Latino. And again, focused on young people. And what sort of ties me is that I'm very actively involved, like most of us here on this podium, with young people inside the firm.
Right.
And, because again, you can't emphasize that is the next group of people that will be succeeding, a Ken Chenault. I mean, we're sitting here and there are only 3 Black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. The future is those young people out there. They're going to be the ones that are going to populate, hopefully, those seats in the future. So we have to spend a lot of time cultivating that talent and making sure that they're ready when that opportunity does knock, because a lot of it is about just being ready when the opportunity presents itself.
So I'm actually a little bit different because since I was new to the firm, I ceased all of my other outside engagements because I felt like I needed to be 150% in to just this. And so I solely focused on this. But at certain points in my career, I'd been the treasurer of Habitat for Humanity. I've done other things. But I will say that ever since the election of 2016, and I did have the good fortune earlier in my life to serve in the Obama administration. And so ever since the election of 2016, I have felt a call personally to be more politically involved again. And I guess I had came to the realization that I didn't think that we had somehow made it when we, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a book, when we were in charge or whatever, about when Obama was president. And I didn't think that we had made it, but I certainly thought we had made much more progress than we actually had in some areas. And so for me personally, I've tried to be a little bit more politically involved, although behind the scenes. In other words, helping people who I knew in the administration who were thinking about running for office, getting more involved, getting engaged. Because for me right now, I think it is like DEFCON 5, right, in terms of where we are as a country, politically in particular. And so, that's always been a passion of mine. I went to graduate school for public policy. My highest and greatest ambition was to serve, in some capacity. I had that great honor early in my life, but I will forever, in some way, outside of work, always find myself engaged politically because the stakes are too high.
Right.
I have children, and I don't want them growing up in a country that's going in the direction it's growing in right now.
Right.
I'll just be point blank. Look, I don't necessarily, I know it's difficult in this environment because people say, don't bring your politics always to work. And that may be true, but some of the things that are taking place now impact our firm's ability to be competitive. Not only do they impact my own personal value, but they impact our business and our ability to operate freely. The things that are taking place with immigration policy. I mean, we can't hire certain people. We can't always attract and retain the best and brightest talent because of immigration restrictions that are being placed upon us. So when there are things that are happening that, go directly against my values as a Black man, against my values as an American citizen, and against my values as a member of my company that I work with and how I put food on the table and support my family, I cannot sit on the sidelines. So I have to be politically involved right now, and I encourage all of us in some fashion to do the same thing.
Good. So with that, why don't we pivot and take some questions from the audience? We've got runners on the side with mics, so if anybody has a question, we'd love to take them.
Got one in the middle right there.
That was fast.
Hi, I'm Jackie Johnson of Profile Africa. How are you?
Good.
Great. I just want to make an observation and like to get some input in its regard. As you talk about preparing the next generation for leadership, or particularly African Americans, next generation leadership, what I see out here outside of corporate America is that actually the millennials and next generation is not so interested in working in corporate America. They're more apt to create their own opportunities and look for how they circulate money amongst themselves and build their wealth from within. I would say even about 20% is it of African Americans that's even looking at corporate America. So with that being said, and I don't think those are conservative numbers by far, what is JP Morgan Chase going to do to bring that economic unity from within and without the organization? Because it's more money outside, and there are Black leaders coming up behind us that have much more impact to be able to reach our community broadly and tap into our wealth. So JP Morgan Chase may need to look outside and see how to engage developing leaders that also partner from within. How are you addressing that? Or are you looking at that? Because 2020 and beyond is really going to change some things, especially as 5G comes on the scene and creates an ability to do business more digitally from banking and other things.
So I'll start. I know you can hit it from a recruiting perspective. So there are a number of things, great question. And you're absolutely right that there's an unprecedented level of interest and activity in people going outside of the traditional corporate America route. And I'll say this, I think we need to be represented everywhere. So I encourage people to, young people to explore opportunities, take calculated risks, and try different things and not only go the corporate route. But we need to be everywhere, and we're already underrepresented. We're underrepresented in tech, we're underrepresented in corporate America and everywhere. So we need to be pushing and preparing people to go into different industries. What we're doing is tied to what's already happening in I think, technology and in startups. There are a number of things. From a business perspective, we realize we are a 200-year-old bank. If we try to do things the way that we've always done them, we will be extinct within a matter of years. So we partner with financial technology companies, both on trying to have the latest technology for ourselves. And the CEO of our consumer bank, a woman named Tashonda Duckett, T. Duckett, who is a Delta, for all the Deltas in the room, and a Black female and a leading force of the firm, has started recently under her purview in consumer banking. We've started to something called Advancing Black Pathways. It is focused on a number of different areas, and a lot of what we're trying to do is tie what the firm is already doing to what Black business owners, Black entrepreneurs, small and minority-owned businesses are doing, and figure out how to create pathways for folks who are doing things that we know can benefit us, our customers, our industry, and really bring it under one umbrella and really try to create a pipeline so that there are opportunities for those folks. We also have something called the Financial Solutions Lab, which is under our corporate responsibility group, the group that I work in, and it's part of our global philanthropy group, and we have competitions each year where we give funding, technical assistance, and coaching to startups, and we've really been focused on, and they're all around financial solutions, and one of them was aimed at having people manage their money better. And we've been really making a focus on more women and minority-owned startups. Now, it's been tough because there are, again, we're so underrepresented, but these are just a few of the ways that we're focusing on tying our efforts to the significant need in the Black community.
One of the things we've done that's even more interesting is the stake we've taken in Detroit, which has been massive, right? Because we have tried to recapitalize that market, which has been severely depressed for too long a period of time. One of the things the firm does is it actually takes senior folks offline of the business, and we'll send them to Detroit on the ground for periods of time to work in whether community development initiatives, small and no-profit businesses, but actually lending their technical assistance and expertise while they're still getting paid by the firm to help people on the ground, boots on the ground in Detroit. And to me, that's meaningful, to allow somebody to do that in the middle of their career. Because there's lots of skills and talent within the firm that can be leveraged for the benefit of other folks outside of the firm. And that's just a critical
And
thing.
folks will be paid by the firm for the 3 weeks that they're doing what's called Service Corps out in the field in different places. Another example is something called the Entrepreneurs of Color Fund that we started and launched in Detroit 2 years ago along with the Kellogg Foundation, and seeded a small business loan fund that we partnered with local CDFI, and they created access to capital for minority-owned businesses. And it was so successful with our initial investment that ended up yielding, I think, about $18 million in loan funds, that we scaled it to San Francisco, the Bronx, and recently Chicago, and we're looking to scale it to a number of different cities. So even more examples.
Next question.
Question over here.
One over here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the panel. You're great for your advice and insight. As a millennial and entrepreneur, it was great to hear a question. And to piggyback off that, I run a firm called Golden Door Asset Management, which is a private equity firm. And I'm a former Goldman Sachs alum, so I left there, went to a REIT, and then started my own fund. So I would actually piggyback off our question and not ask what JP Morgan would do, but I would ask what each one of our panel would do. Because for myself, I've actually went back to Goldman. I have some network at Morgan Stanley and talked about my new fund that I'm raising and talk about how they can be a resource. But actually, because we're so small and we don't have a track record, they can't do much. But I know if I sat with each one of you individually, you could tell me things that could really help me to really root my fund to the next level. And I think that's what we really need to know, is that we probably can't go to a JP Morgan yet, we probably can't go to a Goldman Sachs yet. We need 10 to 15 years of seasonality to really show that we have a track record. But how are you guys helping, funds like ourselves to really develop, or entrepreneurs like ourselves really develop? Because I think that's really what we need to really focus on before we get to the level where the banks or other large institutions are really coming and looking at us and taking us seriously. So that's a question for each one of the panel members.
So one of the reasons we're here is to meet people like you.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, I mean, this is not just an engagement for the firm just for us to sit on a panel. I mean, we came here to be an organic part of this enterprise and the collective. And so we brought our whole selves to the table today. And so whether it's on the golf course or in the meeting rooms or, over a drink at the bar, what have you, we're here. And we'd like to talk to you. We want to hear what you have to say. We have networks of our own in the firm, without the firm, that we can help with. And if we can be of service, that's why we're here, again, to meet people like you. That's right.
And the way that we do that is sharing information. That's what a lot of this conference is about. That's what a lot of this gathering is about, is sharing best practices, not having to make the same mistakes that other people have made. So do reach out to us, and that is one way that I do it all the time. When I come across people like you who are looking to get access to different information, I'll say, have you talked to this guy who's helping small businesses? Have you talked to this person who works on technical assistance for startup funds? What have you? So we try to connect dots, and there's no more there's no magic to it. It's just about finding access to the people who have the information you need. So keep asking the question, and we're happy to give the answers we have, but hopefully you'll continue to get more answers.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, I applaud those people who want to be entrepreneurs and start something, but sometimes you gotta work for somebody first to build a track record, to build, expertise before you can actually go out and start something on your own. So sometimes it's a matter of just realizing that maybe that isn't the right time, or maybe this isn't, maybe I need to lay the groundwork before I can actually step out on my own.
But this goes back to one of the things that is always a personal issue that I always struggle with, and it's like, how do we approach risk in our professional lives? And how do we think about managing risk in our professional lives? When do you decide it's time to jump out there and start your own thing? What does that risk profile look like for us? Because frequently, we don't have the resources that other communities and other people do. We don't have a parent who can fund us if things don't work out for 2 years. We don't have the luxury of having somebody buy us a place to live so that you don't have to pay that bill for a period of time. So frequently, we're always constantly struggling with that risk profile about when and how do you start an initiative. And I just encourage you, to think deeply about your own risk profile and try to get a good handle on that before you do go out and become an entrepreneur, because the commitment and the struggle is real.
Yep.
And I have a very good friend of mine who was a very senior executive at another financial services firm who left to start up an entrepreneurial initiative. And this is a very talented guy. He's very seasoned, very smart. And it's been a struggle. And he's got a great business model. He's got a great idea. But it is really hard to start a business. Make no mistake. It is really, really hard. When that is your sole source of income, and that is what you are doing 24/7, all day long, every day, because there is no escape. If you're an entrepreneur and you're starting your own business, it's 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 a year. So unless you have that level of commitment about it, first off, don't do it, because it's all, you have to be all in. And once you think you've got that figured out and you've got your own risk profile assessed, then you reach out, you start to build your networks first, you talk to people, but you consistently are going to have to keep talking and keep talking and keep talking to people like us and other folks to get the capital and momentum behind your idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, one over here.
And one in the
Yeah.
middle.
One in the middle.
Hello? Good. My name is Bobby Powell Jr., state senator here in Palm Beach County, state of Florida.
Andrew
Also-
Gillum.
That's right. Also a good friend of Andrew Gillum and the only rattler still in Tallahassee that's a, what a rattler.
Oh, boy.
My question is, as it relates to our communities, you've talked about leadership and reinvestment, but what are some of the things that JP Morgan is doing in terms of reinvesting in our communities, in terms of developing some of our dilapidated areas, and working with the community? Kind of, when we invest money in those communities, we kind of build another generation of leadership. What are we doing, or what are you all doing to kind of work on that area?
So as you may have just heard us talk about the Entrepreneurs of Color Fund, what we're doing in Detroit, our Advancing Black Pathways program, our Advancing Black Leaders program. There are a number of different initiatives that are at the firm focused on underserved communities, focused on minority communities that have not had access to capital, access to credit, access to the same opportunities as other communities. Our corporate responsibility group, one of the announcements we made earlier this year after the tax reform bill came out at the end of last year was that we're going to increase our philanthropic spend by 40%, and it's now going to be $350 million a year, $1.75 billion over 5 years, and that is focused on areas that we know are in the highest amount of need, particularly in underserved communities: community development, workforce development, small business development, and financial capability, financial health. These are all focused on things that we have particular expertise in, and going into neighborhoods where we've identified acute needs and figuring out how we can bring the resources that we have to bear to help drive move the needle forward on communities that have not really been able to have progress and have opportunities. So that's, in a nutshell, a lot of the things that we're doing, trying to focus on underserved communities.
Well, I would just add to that. I think we also have to focus on the financial literacy in our community as well. And a lot of what we're going to be doing through Advancing Black Pathways is talking about financial literacy. That is a huge part. You can't grow if your base is always going to be zero. You can't grow if your base is going to be zero. You gotta save, you got to invest, and you got to transfer wealth to the next generation. Those are key. So we, for the longest time, never had anything to transfer to the next generation, which means that we're behind, we're behind. But we have to catch up. And the way we're going to do that is become much more financially sophisticated and a lot more financially fit within the community that we live in. So a lot of what we will do is also focus on financial literacy within the Black community, making sure people understand the importance of saving, the importance of investing for the future, and the importance of wealth transfer, because that really is what's going to be the game changer for us.
I think we take one more question over here on this side.
Brother in the middle. I think this goes back to Damon's point about the level of risk we as black folks are willing to take on, and it always has to be calculated risk. So I'm going to answer the question kind of broadly for everybody's benefit, and I'll talk about your case in particular. So I think we should always be very aware of what we have on our plate at any given time, and make sure that the responsibilities we're taking on are never going to take away from our core functions and our ability to do a phenomenal job at our core responsibilities. You also got to think about the reality of how much time you have. I think when I was younger, I used to do I'll just stay up all night and I'll work through the weekends and yada, yada, yada. And that's unrealistic, because it's going to affect your work product. It's going to affect your ability to, actually produce at work. So think a lot about, when you're tapped for those opportunities, one of the questions for yourself is this a good idea? Do I actually have the capacity? And where does this fall on my list of priorities? Now, about your, oversharing perhaps, or your boss in particular, those are hard questions, and it's very subjective. I think you need to know the environment you're in, know, the kind of the appropriate amount of information to share. Terry said there are some things you don't bring to work. I think in our environment at JP Morgan Chase, that would absolutely be something that I would want to know. I do know there are people on my team who have children with special needs, and there are accommodations we have to make. I have somebody on my team who has a flexible work arrangement so that he and his wife can take care of the extra responsibilities that come along with with his children. But that's because that is an environment that allows us to do that. I can't speak for your organization, and that's something that you may want to try to raise with folks in an appropriate way, and make sure that other folks don't have similar challenges to you. And with your direct boss, this is an interesting point, because you'll often have buy-in for things that at the very senior level they'll think it's a good idea. Folks around you will think it's a good idea, but your direct supervisor will not. That is where having a network of folks you can go to and others and say, hey, this is the situation I'm dealing with. How do I go about this in a way that is not detrimental to me or others coming behind me? And you really do need to have trusted confidants and people you can speak to at the firm who will help you navigate that properly without creating an additional problem for yourself. So I know I didn't directly answer your question and give you a solution.
I got a solution.
There you go. Damon's got the solution.
I got a solution. And I mean this seriously, because I can't imagine that somebody like you who has a daughter with those issues does not know how to multitask and get things done efficiently all the time, right? That is already a core competency of yours, right? So when your boss is concerned that you don't have the ability to do that, you can say, look, I specialize in this. This is what I do. This is who I am. I organically do this at home. All I'm doing is bringing some of these same talents I already have as a mother to the table at work. So you should really want someone like me who knows how to thrive with these additional demands in this position. And so I'd appreciate it if you'd remove the block, because I have no fear that I can do this and do that well.
So with
and
that,
for $20, I'll do that for other people too.
First one's free.
So with that, we want to thank all of you for being such a great audience. We've enjoyed this conversation. I think a few takeaways: the success formula: success equals excellence plus exposure. Building your personal intimacy with your colleagues and really being able to perfect the art of code switching. Leaning into your roles and speaking up for yourself and bringing your whole self to work, and really finding those outlets in your life that can create that kind of balance, spiritual, physical balance, so that you can deal with this day-to-day stresses. With that, we want to thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.